How do free grants and bonds on your investment sound? Let's discuss the RDSP with Jane.
Fellow investors, bonjour! This is Mike Leroux, founder of Dividend Stocks Rocks and passionate investor. You're listening to the Dividend Guy blog podcast where I and my co-host Veronique will help you invest with more conviction so you can enjoy your retirement.
Dividend growth investors, bonjour, Vero here, and you're listening to the Dividend Guy blog podcast. What's going on? Mike's not there. My voice is all messed up. No worries. Mike's going to be there during the next one. But today, I have a big news to share with you guys. I will lead the guest episodes from now on. And today is the day I will break the ice with a very special guest on the show. And a not so well-known topic, the Registered Disability Saving Plans, RDSP. And by the way, listeners, I want more guests in the next month. So if you're interested, just contact me. It'd be a pleasure to chat with you. Now, let me welcome Jane Langmaid, a DIY investor and a longtime DSR member. And from a woman to another, I admire you so much, Jane. It's very a pleasure to have you today. So thank you so much for accepting the invite and for being on my side for this premiere of me leading the guest episode.
Vero, I am honored. It is thrilling to meet you.
Yeah, we've been exchanging like messages over the years, but it's the first time that we actually get to see each other with the cameras and all that. So yeah, it's an honor for me as well. So Jane, let's get our listeners to know you better. What could describe you as a person?
Well, I'm a happily married retiree. I like skiing and travel and golf and pickleball. And I also like spending money, and investing is my hobby.
So what do you like to spend your money on? What's your...
Well, I am a skier and a traveler. I'm going to go to France soon for a month, and I'll be in Mexico. I'll be out west skiing in Silver Star, if there's any Kelowna Vernon people on the listening.
Wow. Well, I'm supposed to go to France with my kids next year, so maybe we'll have to stay in touch after the episode.
Okay.
All right. So we exchanged some notes to prepare for the episode, and I read that you're a retired psychotherapist, which I find very interesting because, you know, as investors, we always say to let emotions aside. So I was wondering, have there been times during which your career background served you as an investor?
Well, that's an interesting question because my background gave me no financial or math training or anything. But what it gave me was I am a trained listener and I'm an educator and I love learning. So this was a really fascinating topic for me to learn about. And it reminds me that I think anybody can learn about investing. So I'm a bit surprised more people aren't interested because it has a big impact on our life. Like if we can make our money make money for us so we can go to France and go skiing. My profession served me in a way because between clients, or if I had a cancellation at work, then my investing hobby was right there for me. And I think it was a good blend.
Interesting. So it gave you like the time to manage your stuff and learn about things.
Oh, yes.
Nice. Okay. And I saw also that that fascinated me a lot. I won't tell your age, but let's just say that we are a couple of years apart. So you wrote that your father was investing by himself before you, and it sounds like he was way ahead of his time. So how did he influence you financially?
Well, I don't mind telling you my age, that I'm in my early 70s, because I'd like to encourage other women in their 70s to take charge of their investments. My dad was indeed ahead of his time, and thank you for saying that. He retired as an orthodontist at age 76 or so he worked a long time. And then it was around the early 2000s, and brokerages started offering online investing. And so for most of his life, commissions were really expensive. The fact that
Mm-hmm.
he could trade for cheaper, I mean, it used to cost hundreds of dollars for a trade. I think it was all geared
True.
at how many shares you bought. So anyway, he subscribed to newsletters. He had no financial training. He was big on investment stock on dividend stocks, though Canadian dividend stocks. He loved the
Wow.
fact the taxes were better on them, and so he learned to use a computer. And he didn't even understand about what was the World Wide Web. He thought the bank was in his computer, but he told me, Jane, no matter what, no one will look after your money than you yourself will.
Wow, I love that story. It's
Mhm.
very impressive. And do you remember like any of the stocks he had that would be worth mentioning?
Well, I will mention Royal Bank and the pipelines. He loved Interpipeline in those days and utilities. He was pretty standard. I think he bought CNR. That was his big thrilling move because it didn't
Uh-huh.
have a dividend and it turned into big capital gain for him. He was all excited about that.
Well, fun fact, I do hold CNR in my portfolio, so yeah. Okay, and how else did you get educated on finance and investment since you had no financial background?
Well, I read books and I read online. And I came across the dividend guy before DSR existed, Dividend Stocks Rock. And I learned about setting aside money each month. I was late to the party. Confession, Vero, I was in my early 50s before I woke up and decided it was time to stop spending and to smarten up and to plan for retirement. And that, for me, coincided with a second marriage. And luckily, my husband then, who was a bachelor with a house that was paid for, he encouraged me to save my money and invest it for retirement because he was hoping that we could retire together and have a good time, which
Mm-hmm.
is exactly what I did. I just mentioned that because people might wonder, well, in your 50s, how do you start investing? And then you have a good portfolio. And then, of course, my dear dad is not still alive. And all of his investing prowess paid off, and he left money to his 4 children.
Okay, so you're the living proof that it's never too late to start. That's that.
Well,
I love it. I love
yeah.
it. So I know you are passionate about the disability tax credit and the RDSP, but I'd like to know more about your investment style and strategy before we move on to that topic. So you became a DIY investor in 2006. Sorry. What did your portfolio look like before that, if you had any?
Well, before 2006, let's see, I had moved my accountant from a stockbroker who managed a pretty volatile mix. Like those were the days, I don't know, Bre-X was even on the screen. And I moved to an insurance broker who sold mutual funds. So at that point, maybe this was 2003, I was just looking for steady, safe growth.
Mm-hmm.
And then, my reading led me to understand more about mutual funds and about fees and how they were reducing my gains. So my next step was exchange traded funds or ETFs. And I
Mm-hmm.
learned they were a similar basket of stocks but lower fees. And I also learned that passive funds did better overall than actively managed funds often. So that was also a big eye opener. So I moved into ETFs by 2006.
And were you happy about that, or what was the trigger to make the big move and start your market journey and really take full control
Well,
of your portfolio?
after, um, well, by like in 2008 is when there was the big crash, eh?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's when I made a big mistake because I was doing my ETFs. I was buying every month. I had about 8 ETFs, and it was percolating along. But by then, I had maybe say $300,000, and I lost 30%. That means
Mm-hmm.
$100,000, Vero.
Right.
Like when you lose that and you see it on the screen and you know how hard you worked and what you didn't do to save money, well, that was scary, but I just kept investing every month. And then the bad day came. I was sick at home watching BNN, and on came this firm that said, well, no problem. They had sold out all their investors before the crash. I thought, oh my goodness, they knew what signs to watch for. They knew how to time the market. Obviously, I didn't know what I was doing, and so I moved my money over to them. Well, that was well into '08, and I think it was in '09 the market started to rebound, but they thought it was like deflation in Japan and all this stuff. They didn't get back in. So it didn't take me too long. A few more months, I said, oh, to heck with this. I'm taking back my money. I'm going to do what my dad does. Because in the crash, Dad was skiing and sailing and playing tennis. Yes, he was still playing tennis. My dad at 85 was, shooting his score.
Wow.
He was an athlete. So I saw that he just continued to live off his dividends and he didn't pay much attention to what the market did. So I thought, okay, if I move to dividend stocks, I might not panic next time because I'll be getting an income.
So do you feel like, because I heard Mike said that a lot of times, and I kind of relate to that also, the difference between ETF and dividend growth stocks is that the main difference actually is that ETF, like you said, it's a basket of multiple stocks that you don't have much control over. And while dividend growth stocks, you select and you pick each and every one of them. So did it improve your confidence and your conviction into what you decided to invest in?
Definitely. This is where the psychology comes in, because my stocks are, I don't want to say they're like my children, but I know each of my stocks and they're like my friends and I'm standing by them and they're standing by me. So I'm much less likely to panic or sell out because it really depends on that company that I'm invested in. Whereas an ETF is a lot harder to be friends with.
I like the analogy. Thanks. I'll keep that in mind. So what does your portfolio look like today regarding asset and sector allocation?
Well, I have, I'm a good DSR member. So my portfolio is 100% equities, but that means I keep about 5% in high interest savings, both because, like Mike says, keep 2 or 3 years worth of income. And then I like more than that because sometimes I have gifts or things I want to spend on, and I don't want to have to worry, is the market up or down, or which stock am I going to sell? So I just keep monitoring that I have a healthy cash segment. And then my portfolio is, about 8 sectors, no more than 20% per sector, no more than 5% per stock, although sometimes, it could go to 7 or 8 if I really like that friend. I'm pretty equally weighted between Canada and the US. And it's all dividend growth, but not necessarily high yield.
So you're comfortable with low yield, high growth stocks, even as a retiree, which is kind of unusual. Let's put it that way. We are trying to teach people about that, but it's like destroying taboos and like misconceptions. So what do you feel this strategy brings to you?
Oh, it brings a lot, actually. This has been another step in my investment evolution, I think, because now many of my favorite stocks are low yield, high growth, like Mike's favorite, Alimentation Couche-Tard, and Costco or Apple, CNR, Microsoft, TFI. I mean, I'm so glad Mike has liberated me as a retiree from boring high yield stocks, though I do have quite a few of them.
And what's your favorite stock and why?
Oh, do you know what? I really like Broadcom. And, I was going to say with U.S. stocks especially, I like low yield and growth because there's no dividend tax credit for my US stocks. I'm much better with capital gains for US stocks. So
Right.
my favorite right now is Broadcom. Oh my goodness, I looked it up, Vero, to make sure I got it right. And I saw back in 2020, I bought $36,000 worth. Today it's at 80,000, but I
Wow.
sold 43,000 worth. So quick math, we're talking over 120, and that's in 4 years. And I read about Broadcom on Dividend Stocks Rock. Like I would never have heard of Broadcom. I don't know anything. I just like read through what you guys recommend and then I decide. So it's funded a few vacations and gifts. Thank you. And I still have
Wow.
a healthy supply.
Oh my God. I found that amazing. It's like it's the first time that I get to chat with the DSR member for so long, and you are bringing me so great feedback without necessarily knowing it, and I appreciate that a lot. So it's no secret you're a Dividend Stocks Rock member. So why did you subscribe at first? And does this service still help you after all these years? Because you've been a long time member.
I was in the front door. I think there was some sort of experiment group or something I signed up for. So the timing was good because I was just moving into dividend stocks after '09, and I came across the dividend guy, and then he opened Dividend Stocks Rock, and I subscribed right away. I mean, as mentioned, I have no financial training. I don't know how to read an annual report or analyze stocks, and I don't really want to learn that part. I feel fully supported by DSR guidance. Even today,
Mhm.
like there's no way I would do what I'm doing otherwise. I need the emotional and the technical support.
And what part of DSR resonate the most with you in terms of your strategy, or like what tools or what principles did you learn at DSR that you apply almost every day or every time that you look at your portfolio?
Well, it taught me about building a portfolio, which was a whole new
Hmm.
concept for me. Because a lot of people just say, oh, I heard about this stock, it's going up, you should buy it. Well, I'm much more disciplined. I really like, well, does it fit in my sector? You know, does it cover something I don't have? So that might be the most important thing for my confidence is knowing I have a solid portfolio that's carefully constructed and I know each of those stocks pretty well. Mike has also encouraged me to not have too many stocks. So I have about
Hmm.
30 and they're just my favorites. When I'm kind of getting iffy about a stock, I probably sell it sooner than he would recommend, but I'm just more comfortable just feeling really good about my stocks. I'd rather have
Hmm.
extra of one I really like than have an iffy one.
Hmm. Well, I think it's only smart for you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, while we say that we should keep emotions apart, the most important thing still remains to be comfortable and to sleep well at night, like we say all the time. So, yeah, I think it's really smart from you. Before we continue, listeners, we must share exciting news. We are currently working on a retirement community to help people prepare for and manage their retirement. Today, we invite you to join our waitlist at thedividendguyblog.com/retirement. Mike, what can you tell us about this project?
So, as you know, I work as a financial planner for about 10 years. And over the past 2 years, I started doing plans and financial projections for our DSR members. I realized that there is a huge need for them to find answers and connect with other retirees. It could be a lonely path because, money is taboo. It's hard to talk about this. Maybe you don't have anybody in your situation. So, we want to create a safe place where people about to retire and young retirees can share their tricks, connect with each other, and find answers to their problems. Of course, the platform will be managed by you and myself. There will be webinars, courses, interviews, and of course, a lot of ways to connect with other retirees.
I'm thrilled to join this community and welcome you. We're gonna have so much fun. Again, be the first to know about all the details by adding your name to the waitlist at thedividendguyblog.com/retirement. So, Jane, before we continue, I'd like to tell you how much I appreciate your experience and guts. I like that you are a woman taking control of your investment with success. You've shown that to us earlier. And you are also very open to helping others, which I admire. And this leads us to the DTC and RDSP. How did you discover the disability tax credit and the registered disability savings plan?
Well, I had heard of the disability tax credit vaguely, and I had a son with a special condition, but I didn't think that he qualified. And then it was on the DSR investment forum that I met another investor, Diane. She said it's okay if I say her name. And she also had a son with a condition similar to mine. And so we talked about it, and she had applied for the disability tax credit for him and got it. Both of our sons were working at the time, so this really surprised me because I knew it carried a lot of advantages, and one of them is the registered disability savings plan for retirement. So in the end, it was Diane at the DSR forum who motivated me.
So hello, Diane. Maybe we could chat too. So this plan is unique to Canada, but who qualifies for it? Like, are there any categories or anything?
Yeah, that's so. To get to the savings plan, you got to apply for the tax credit. So the tax credit, and just so you know, a tax credit, like I'm not an accountant, but I know that it means like if you pay $10,000 in taxes, it'll give you back about $1,800 a year. So even to the person who gets the tax credit, there's an advantage. But the second advantage is the disability savings plan. So to qualify, there's lots of, like it's spelled out on the CRA website, but basically people have to have a marked restriction, that's their words, in one or more areas. So I can give you some examples of people who I've helped qualify. Like I have a friend with a knee problem, and she walks 3 times slower than other people. She really can't get too far. And it has to last 12 months or more, and so she did qualify. There's several who I know that have qualified under mental functions, and that's clearly spelled out. That can include mental illness or being on a spectrum or anything that interferes with judgment and thinking. I have a friend with a vision problem. She has a vision and a walking problem. So if you have 2 problems, then you don't need to have as serious an impact as if there's just one.
Okay.
There's a young member of my extended family who's just 6 years old now, and he qualified as birth because there's some special needs. And for any children under 18, there's monthly additional payments to the parents that go along with their monthly child benefit that they get. The child with the disability tax credit gets extra for the parents. And then anybody who needs life-sustaining therapy, like diabetes or dialysis, or they need oxygen, well, they can qualify too.
Wow,
so,
that's pretty
as I
large.
say, it's all set out on the website, but it can be a bit daunting for people. And at the end, I'm going to give you a resource that's more user-friendly. Really, the problem is finding a doctor who's willing to have the time and to fill out the application. So I mentioned my friend with a knee problem, and in her case, her doctor still refuses to sign the application. Well, I find many doctors have misconceptions about the disability tax credit, or they're just overwhelmed with paperwork. Luckily, the same friend I'm talking about had a physiotherapist. So the physio, in the case of walking, can sign the form. You have to look.
Oh.
CRA says who can sign the form. So my friend was able to get the credits back 10 years. And once you just check off that you want CRA to revise your past tax returns, and they do all the work once you've qualified. Also to mention, sometimes people who get the tax credit are low income. And they say, well, what can I do with a tax credit because I don't pay any taxes anyway? They can give it to any family member who's supporting them.
Oh,
and
that's
then there's a
interesting.
caregiver's tax credit. So once they get the disability tax credit, their caregiver can both use that credit and use the caregiver tax credit.
Wow, I didn't know that. Like I'm a totally newbie to this topic and I find it very interesting. So just to make it clear, you must qualify for the disability tax credit to open an RDSP. And if I understood well, you pretty much need like a health professional to get that qualification, right?
Yes. On the CRA website, the application is about 16 pages, but you just choose the pages that relate to your specific condition. That would be important because if people go into their doctor with 16 pages, I mean, anybody would be discouraged.
And do you think that's the reason why it is still unknown? Because, before I saw you and Diane talk about it on the forum, I had no clue like RDSP existed. So why do you think it is still unknown?
Well, I mean, first of all, the disability tax credit isn't well known. And then the registered disability savings plan is kind of hidden behind it. Neither of them are flashy. RRSPs get lots of advertising. Who ever heard of advertising for an RDSP? Unless you're looking for it, because there are firms that would love to help you with the RDSP, but you got to look for it.
And what kind of grants and subsidies can disabled investors get?
Okay, well, that's the interesting part. So if we start at the lower end of the scale, what is amazing is if a person is low income and they can't contribute at all, if they open an RDSP, the government will automatically deposit $1,000 a year for 20 years to a maximum of $20,000. Then people who can afford to contribute, well, the most you can contribute to attract any grant is $1,500 a year. You put in $1,500, the government puts in $3,500. So it's a huge. It's almost three times. Like the government gives you extra. The first 500 you get $3 from the government for every dollar, and after 500 it's $2 for every dollar. So, I mean, if you can qualify, say your family puts money in the RDSP, the $1,500, but you're low income, so then you also get the bond. That's $6,000 a month going into your RDSP, and it could start when you're born.
Wow! So it's a game changer, really, for those people.
It's phenomenal for someone who's living on disability. They don't get much money, but sadly, they're the last person to even hear that this is possible. And you can only contribute to the RDSP to age 49. Well, you can contribute later, but the government won't contribute after you are age 49. And the maximum for grants is $70,000. So that's 20 years worth of grants, and then that's the end of the grants. But you can't just pull the money out of the RDSP when you want. You have to wait 10 years after the last bond or grant, unless you want to pay a penalty. And then they're very strict about how you withdraw it, because this is intended to be a pension for people. They want to make it last till the person turns age 83.
Okay, so do the investors who apply need to be supported by family members or caregiver? Because I imagine that depending on the condition of those investors, sometimes it could be heavy to manage, right?
Well, yes, indeed. You really need family support. However, imagine someone with hearing loss or with diabetes. They could have a good job. They could do their own investing. That said, there are income limitations. So it's fairly strict, I think, for the bonds. The grants, I don't know the details on that, but just to say that often family members are involved to help people who have disabilities.
And you've mentioned like grants and subsidies and all that, but is this savings plans enough to finance a healthy retirement, in your opinion, especially considering the fact that most of those people won't necessarily work full time through their entire life?
Yes, well, let's take two ends of the scale again. I'll start at the top end this time for people like Diane and me who are, financially astute, should I call us? I don't know. We're aware anyway. Our sons were in their mid to late 30s before we ever heard of the RDSP. So, but we're still able to take advantage because if the condition started 10 years before you apply, the government will give you the grants and the bonds for the last 10 years, as long as you play catch up and put money in. So as families, we can do that. And by contributing the maximum, or our sons also contribute because both sons work, even starting this late, with an annual return of 7%, that's kind of what we're aiming at with dividend growth. It might not quite be that, but if we hit that target, their retirement, it would be $40,000 a year from the RDSP, and that would be in addition to whatever income they are getting.
So that's pretty good.
It's definitely, for someone who wouldn't have any of that, because, there are municipal and provincial benefits if you have a disability, and the RDSP was negotiated so that holding it and withdrawing from it doesn't affect eligibility for other benefits. It's possible you have to pay some taxes depending how much was gained in the market, but you don't pay any tax on what was contributed originally.
And I mean, it probably is a lot of weight off your shoulders as a parent, also of a disabled child, to know that your child has this money aside and will be good for retirement.
Exactly. And it's so nice for the person themselves to feel I've got my own. It's kind of a version, I think, of an RRSP for people that they have a way to feel financially independent and not just waiting for someone to always help them. I want to talk about the other end of the scale, Vero, because this is also
go ahead.
Quite fascinating. Let's say there is a child, the family's low income, the parents open a plan, but they can't put any money in. But the government will put in the $20,000 that they talked about. So now, the child's 20 years old, and then it grows until they're age 59 when they can withdraw. Even if it just was in a savings account, 3% growth, that would, I think, come out at about $5,000 a year in withdrawals for them, which doesn't sound like a ton, but that's $5,000 extra over what else they have. Now, if that parent somehow invested with DSR and they followed, other rules, so they got the 7% growth annually, do you know what the annual withdrawal would be? Not 5,000, 25,000 a year. And that's based on no money in, just invested at 7% from early on. That's the trick. Like, you got to get in early to get that kind of return.
But that's pretty impressive. I didn't expect that. Like, I mean, it really is a game changer. Like I said, for every people, like you said, no matter the income that their family has, they can change their lives with that. Wow. Okay. So I was wondering, for this type of account, do you still use the same investment strategy?
Well, I do. And I'll tell you what I do, because it's not the only family member who wants me to help with their account. If there's less than 80,000 in the account, I just use ETFs. One American, one Canadian, broad market, just, I keep it simple. Once there's more than 80,000, then I figure that's enough money to have a portfolio of 20, 30 stocks. And it is a 100% equity portfolio that I still use for a registered disability plan. So I prepare the account holder that this can be volatile. It can go up and down. Like in my son's case, I just report monthly where he's at. You're up this month or you're down this month. And from January 1st, this is where you're at. So just bottom line is all he cares about. And he's not nervous about it going up and down because he's used to it. But that would be, a fact of life with a 100% equity portfolio. Probably later on, especially once the person is withdrawing, I would just see whether they want to continue with that kind of portfolio mix, or that probably I do more like I do and keep a healthy savings account at that point, so you don't have to sell in a down market.
Right. So you pretty much manage the portfolio yourself, but is your son also engaged in the buy and sell process? Like, is he aware of the stocks you buy and the ones that you sell?
Well, he's not overly engaged. He's got a pragmatic approach to business, but he's a more an outdoors person too. So I just report to him where he's at, and then I tell him the stocks he knows, like Apple he knows, and National Bank, he banks at National Bank. So, I'll encourage him that those are some of his holdings, and if he shows any interest, I'm happy to talk about it with him.
So did you teach your children financial literacy? Because I know that you are helping a lot of other people too. So if so, do you have any advice for parents who'd like to do the same?
Well, I learned it by just watching my dad. And to some extent, it may or may not have mattered what he actually said. Like, I was still doing ETFs when he was doing dividend stocks, because I thought dividend stocks were for old guys. And my children, I think, consider me a bit of an old lady. But there are, I think, like 2 of my 3 children do their own investing.
Wow.
And so I think the main thing I've tried to teach them is to start earlier than me and don't get into debt.
And as a mother to another, did the investment journey impact your relationship with your son or your other children? I mean, finance and investment can be a touchy topic. So did it ever create tensions between you, or has it strengthened your bond?
Always strengthened our bond because it's a wonderful topic of conversation. I mean, kids like it when you don't ask them about their personal life, so we can talk stocks, and it's a mutual interest. With all 3 of my children, we have fun talking about investments and stocks.
Okay, so Jane, you have generously shared government links about the DTC and RDSP. I will include them in the show notes at thedividendguyblog.com/197. Before I let you go, is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, there is one thing. I'd like to offer a tip about making the application for the disability tax credit and to make it easier on the medical professional. So in the links, one is to the plan, what's it called? The Plan Institute. So that's not government. That's a nonprofit that helps people with disabilities. And they have a tool that I've linked to. And if you fill out the tool, it creates a letter that then you can give to your doctor. And on the application, the doctor can just put "see attached letter," sign the letter, and it can save, it clarifies for the doctor exactly what does the disability tax credit require, say for the walking criteria or hearing. So I would encourage people to check out the Plan Institute. And I would just like to acknowledge that institute because it's out in BC, but they seem generous to help anybody from any province. And they researched and campaigned for the RDSP with Jim Flaherty, who was the financial minister at the time. back in 2008. And Jim Flaherty's son had disability. And so the Plan Institute offers like tutorials, calculators, user-friendly resources. It's easier than, CRA isn't known for being friendly. I hope they don't take offense if I say that. I've never heard of another country that offers a plan like the RDSP. Like my U.S. friends on disability forums, they can't believe it.
All right. So Plan Institute, very good resource. As I said, I will put all the links in the show note at thedividendguyblog.com/197. Thanks again, Jane, for being so honest and helpful. I appreciate the opportunity you gave us to know more about you and also this mystified topic. Listeners, to make sure you select the right stocks for you, no matter the account, download your free copy of the DSR stock checklist at thedividendguyblog.com/checklist. For the show notes and related content, visit thedividendguyblog.com/197. If you'd like to appear on the show, message me on the Dividend Guy blog Facebook page or at the Dividend Guy on X. Until next week, stay invested.
Hey fellow investors, it's Mike here. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. Please note that the Dividend Guy blog podcast is at no time issuing buy or sell recommendation. Please do your own due diligence as this podcast is recorded for information and hopefully fun purposes only. Make your research, make sure you do your stuff. We're not responsible for your losses or your profit after listening to this episode. And until next one, stay invested.